Okay. Cameron, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really glad to have you on, actually, buddy. I think it
Happy to
provides,
be here.
thank you. I think it provides a different aspect as well, because with your military background, the way you're living, some of the challenges that you're doing, I think you kind of, you provide like an old school kind of mentality with a modern lifestyle, and I think that blend is nice to see. If I always get the guests to kind of describe who they are, or tell the audience who they are and describe what they do, and I guess the purpose of being on the podcast, kind of their motive and their mentality. Would you like to introduce yourself? Because I think if I do it, I just get it all wrong and won't do you any justice.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, sure. No problem. So yeah, quick overview of me then. I guess I started out in fitness, and I've moved very much into sort of the fitness meets mindset space. So as you alluded to, former Royal Marine, left the Royal Marines, got headhunted out to the MENA region to work with VIPs out there, personal training. And then since then, like I say, I've moved very much more in towards the mindset space. I've always been pretty fascinated with the connection between, fitness and the mind, the brain, the body. And so that's led me into this space now where I'm doing sort of total human performance coaching packages. So geared very much towards sort of executives, professionals, high achievers, alpha males who are looking to go sort of well beyond the average when it comes to sort of fitness, performance at work, career development, personal development, and trying to sort of cover all the bases of good health, basically.
The military stuff really excites me. I just think it provides kind of a mentality that isn't seen in the modern era. We're in an era now where it's like, don't discipline your kids, don't hit your kids, don't, that kind of old school sense. I'm not saying that's good, but that kind of old school kind of mindset is gone. And I think is gone in every aspect. Is there anything that you would say is happening kind of in a military sense that men could kind of use in the modern era that we've kind of lost? Like for me personally, I think it's the kind of weakness of mindset. Like things go wrong and guys kind of turn to a way out. The one example I always use is masturbation. So I think when things go wrong in guys' lives, they turn to porn, masturbation, they kind of like cower, especially when it comes to women. Is there anything that you say like the military kind of lifestyle is still, more guys need that kind of mentality? Does it teach you anything that more men need to understand?
I think, for me, I always look back on my career with a little bit of disappointment because I didn't sort of tick all the boxes that I hoped to tick when I was there. And I tried to focus on the benefits, the lessons that I learned there were still invaluable. And I think for me, one of the main benefits is putting into perspective what is a hard day, what is hard work, because we've naturally evolved down this path where, less and less jobs are manual now. We're going down the route of, obviously technological revolution. Lots of hard labor jobs are becoming automated, are being taken care of by machines. We've got AI, all this stuff, more and more professional services jobs are becoming available. And I think, and also, it's been a little while now since we were exposed to a conventional war. So we're getting less and less exposure as a species to these really kind of brutal times, these times that we go through where everybody is impacted by something as savage as war or, this pandemic obviously has been pretty serious for people, but let's face it, it's not the bubonic plague, it's still on the grand scale of things. When we look back at the history of pandemics, it's pretty minuscule. And so for me, that's a massive one. It just puts into perspective what actually is fucking hard work. Yeah. I'm always privileged that I can compare a bad day now to the shittest day that I had when I was, yomping through the hills of some godforsaken terrain with however much weight in a Bergen on my back, not having any idea when it's going to be over, on my fifth or sixth day in the field with very little sleep or whatever. I can I can probably never hope to recreate a scenario as bad as the worst that's played out for me during my military career, even without being operationally deployed. So for me, that's a massive benefit. I think definitely if there would be number one advantage of bringing back something like national service or, something along those lines, that would probably be it before we completely tail end off of the culture of having to go out and do really hard work. I mean, it's probably really only farmers and military personnel that really get exposed to those kind of really prolonged, long hours of hard work. Now, maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I might have missed the profession there, but yeah, that would be my first thoughts on it.
I remember when I was growing up, I was doing labour, and some of the days were so tough. Like they bring in one of the, I think it was the 6-foot skips, and the ramp going up to one of those 6-foot skips when the wheelbarrow was full, and you do that repeatedly for 4 hours, lunch break, back again, 4 or 5 hours repeatedly. Maybe you get on the jackhammer, maybe the sledgehammer, just banging the sledgehammer onto concrete. And I just think, until like even today, and I was doing this like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and even today, that discipline and that kind of mentality that I built doing that, and that somewhat body hardening has stuck with me today, where although I haven't done it for a while, and I do a lot more sitting in front of the desk now, when you do, let's say you're at the gym and it's a really heavy, like personal best deadlift, you've still got it there. Your mentality is still, I know what this is. This is nothing too difficult.
Yeah.
What do you think in terms of, like, let's say, body hardening? We touched on it then. Like, what can you do to replace what we've lost as men? So, it's somewhat good that we're not, obviously it's great, we're not going to war as much anymore. It's somewhat good that we're not living the way that we used to. The modern world is nice for men to live in, and so it should be. But like we said, we are losing certain aspects that perhaps you would see, let's say, in the military. So how can we replace that? Is it fitness? Is that where you kind of come into that, like, body hardening? I've seen you doing a ton of fitness challenges. I think they're brilliant. We'll get onto them later. But do you think that's the way to do it, to kind of like push yourself? And how would you do that?
Yeah, I think it goes beyond fitness, and this is, very much going into the area that I'm really passionate about here, because fitness only takes care of so much, and fitness can still be very comfortable. And this is a big problem that I see with people a lot of the time when they come to me and say that they've been following a program, but they're not seeing the results. And, they'll show me a program and I think, yeah, well, they're ticking most of the boxes here, the movements are looking good. And then what kind of comes to fruition is that it's the intensity of effort that's lacking, and again, this is a problem with HIIT training. HIIT training has been sort of marketed as like the panacea for time efficient training, but most people don't realize that they're not actually doing it to the intensity that you need to get that epoch effect where you're burning all the calories for however many hours afterwards. And so fitness can be very comfortable. Fitness, keeping fit, is not the same as pushing yourself to your limit and resetting the boundaries of what you perceive to be possible. And I think the first thing that's required to get there is to understand that there are massive benefits of doing that cannot be found anywhere else. And again, going back to the first question, massive benefit of being in the Marines, like having to be pushed to that limit on a regular basis, taken out of your comfort zone. I really think it's a very difficult thing to try to describe to somebody how beneficial that is mentally without them doing it. So yeah, I think in answer to your question, there are definitely things that people can be doing, and it's probably the hardest thing to self-motivate to do, and that is to take yourself out of your comfort zone on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be something absolutely brutal. It doesn't have to be something as intense as signing up to an Ironman next week, or to go and do a marathon if you're still getting used to running your first 5K. But it can be just little things, just taking yourself out of your comfort zone. If somebody who suffers from social anxiety, I've dealt with this kind of stuff with clients of mine before, and I've got them to just make a habit of going to a new place each week on their own, maybe a cafe, try somewhere new. And we'll always do sort of, every week that I have with clients, we'll have little micro aims, and I've set people homework, like strike up a conversation with the person behind the counter next time you go to a cafe. So it's not even necessarily fitness based. Other things can be, obviously fitness, obviously pushing yourself harder than you've gone before. That's a very obvious one. Others can be less obvious. I think daily disciplines for me is a big one. I like to do things daily that make me uncomfortable. Like my sort of go-to one at the moment is cold showers.
Yeah, I hate them.
Yeah, everyone hates them. I hate them. But there's something about it, mate. There's something about, self-motivating to get into a fucking freezing cold shower first thing in the morning, spending 3 or 4 minutes in there, and then getting out and knowing that most people won't do that, but that you did it all of your own, and that's your hard thing for the day done. And now, you're wide awake, neurotransmitters are firing, body's warming up, blood's flowing, all that good stuff. So yeah, that long answer, I'll always give you a long answer, but
there's more information to come back off. What sort of benefits are you getting from the cold showers? Are you feeling that they're legit or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think physiologically speaking, they're not as beneficial as full submersion in cold.
Yeah.
I think for me, like the mental aspects is the most beneficial side of it. Just the fact that it's miserable and no one wants to do it, and just getting in and getting it done anyway. But yeah, from a physiological point of view, I do think that there's some benefit. Cold therapy in general is a bit of a funny one, because if you actually try to find a decent body of credible science that backs up the benefits of cold treatment, it's actually not that easy to find. And it's just one. Yeah, no one wants to justify it. Yeah, maybe we can still convince ourselves that it's not useful. We'll come up with an idea. But yeah, like in all seriousness, it's one of those things that it's been tried and tested so much by so many populations that we just know, it works. It reduces inflammation, it increases blood flow. So yeah, I think physiologically speaking, it increases blood flow, which is always good. And it's good as a stressor. Yeah, we can potentially go into a bit more detail about this. People always talk about stress as if it's always negative, which isn't true. You've got 2 types of stress: distress, eustress. Eustress is good stress. And sometimes stressors have this beneficial effect. And I think as a stressor, it can be quite good for, again, sort of stimulating the right kinds of neurotransmitters, chemicals in the brain, getting the norepinephrine going first thing, which, wakes the body up, gets you alert. So yeah, for me, mindset, mentally, I think the benefits are more aligned to that, but there's some physiological benefit there as well, I think.
How do you think you build that mindset? Because all of us know that the mind is like the start of everything that you do, whatever it is. Do you think that stems from fitness? Do you think fitness is the best way to achieve that? Because me and Steve, who comes on the podcast quite a lot, he's a personal trainer. We always talk about how all areas are important. You need to be like a Renaissance type of man. But at the core of that is fitness, because it kind of gives you that energy. It gives you that. It's very easy to go to the gym for an hour and feel better, like you've improved very quickly. But it's very hard to do that in other areas of life. But it kind of gives you that kickstart for the rest of the day. I think if you went to the gym on a Monday morning at 5 a.m. till 6 a.m., you're more likely to go on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Whereas if you skip the Monday, I guarantee you're going to skip another 2 or 3 days. And what do you think in terms of, let's say, the catalyst for everything else? Do you think it is fitness, or do you think it stems somewhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always try to encourage clients to adopt a few keystone habits first and foremost. So keystone habit being any habit that acts as a catalyst for more positive behavior. And I think absolutely fitness is probably the most obvious keystone habit. People who generally have that structure based around movement tend to find that'll have some positive impact on the whole rest of their lives. And again, I think what's not getting talked about enough in health in general is the relationship between movement and the brain. Essentially, health comes very much down to but in very large part to chemical balance, chemical regulation in the brain. No one who's unhappy is healthy. So,
yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah, I'm kind of digressing slightly from the question, but the answer to the question really for me is practice. That might sound sort of frighteningly obvious and simple, but I get people saying to me all the time things like, "Yeah, I just don't have any discipline," and discipline isn't something that you have or don't have. It's by definition, it's practice. And people say, I don't have motivation. Well, motivation, discipline is part of motivation, and motivation very much goes hand in hand with energy, and action breeds energy. Inactivity breeds lethargy, breeds laziness, down regulates metabolic functions in the body. The less we do, the less we feel like we want to do. I mean, this is one of the reasons why high performers, high achievers, these alpha male guys and women, super professional, super busy women, entrepreneurs, they tend to have more energy than the population that's doing a lot less, because they're always on high alert. They're always moving, they're always looking for the next thing to do. And I think that's the worst kind of cycle that people can fall into is not including that keystone habit of movement, then developing that lethargy off the back of that inactivity, finding that they've got no energy, which then translates into no motivation, saying they don't have discipline when actually discipline is just the thing they're not doing. And then we get into that cycle. So I absolutely agree with you. Like, fitness is probably the most obvious keystone habit that seems to have a positive impact on everything else.
I know it sounds crazy. I've had this debate with a few people, but because you said a minute ago that unhealthy people are unhappy. And I've always said that, I might be paraphrasing what you said, but it was something around that realm. And I've always said that a lot of depression, because depression is the biggest killer of men under 50. So it just says it's a major problem, But I think one way to get rid of that, simple as it sounds, is to just get off your ass and go for a run or start lifting weights. I really think that 80-90% of cases would be solved if people just went, fuck it. Do you know what? I'm going to go and lift as heavy as I can for an hour and then make it into a consistent thing. And having a great body, being in shape isn't going to be end all and be all. It's not going to make you happy. But it's like we said, it's going to be that catalyst. And I know myself, if I have a lazy day and it's supposed to be my rest day, but I start to feel negative, maybe a Sunday, and I'm not scheduled to go to the gym that day. I'm like, fuck it. Let me just do something. Let me go outside. Let me do some practice. And you instantly, an hour later, feel better. And you might have been depressed all the way up to like 4 or 5 p.m. And then you go to the gym for an hour, you come back, you want to stay up all night and work.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I haven't verified this as a genuine quote, but I remember seeing a classic Facebook meme with Jim Carrey's face on it, and regardless of if it belongs to him or not, like, I totally agree wholeheartedly with the statement, which was something like, I believe that depression's a real thing, but if you're not moving regularly, eating well, getting plenty of sunlight, maintaining good social relationships and, something else, then you're not giving happiness a fighting chance. And that really kind of sums up the whole thing. We are products of our lifestyle, and a lifestyle is a combination of habits. It's a culmination of habitual behaviors. I mean, if you sit down now and write a list of everything you do that's habitual, it's going to be probably 80 to 90% of the things that you do. Most of us get up in the morning, we have the same morning routine, we go to the same place for work, we go to the same places for lunch, we eat the same food, we come back home to the same place, we go to the gym, to the same gym each day. We're so habitual creatures. And so, the outcome of that is that behavior. And this is why I like to promote these non-negotiable daily disciplines. So, like going back to fitness being a keystone habit, I find that very much in the early days when I've got clients moving into a program off the back of doing nothing at all, if they don't do something every day, it's very easy for them, or very difficult for them, to build that initial habit. So if it's not going to be a strenuous exercise session, then we'll have a non-negotiable activity in there, which could be just going for a walk, or, a quick, simple body weight superset, push-ups and sit-ups in the living room, 10 minutes done, something like that. And having those non-negotiable habits that are a predetermined decision, that don't require any motivation or self-encouragement, that are just going to happen. You've already made that decision in your mind. That can sometimes be the key to making that happen.
Have you ever read the book The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv
No.
Eker? Unbelievable
I haven't.
book. It's like the one thing that I always took from that book is that he kind of spoke about how there's like generational similarities. So somebody like somebody might be earning, let's say 40,000-50,000 a year, might have 2 kids and live in a certain area with a kind of set up lifestyle. They'll have kids and fast forward 30-40 years, go and test them, and the lifestyle is almost, there's almost symmetry between the two. And they were saying that very few people get out of the kind of, I don't want to say like negative or rut, because everybody's individual, their parents' journey is their parents' journey, but everyone kind of mirrors what their parents did, but they don't realize they're doing it because it's 30 or 40 years apart from where their parents were. So the technology changes, the house changes, let's say inflation, so the price of stuff changes. So it appears as though they're having a better life than they are, but in actuality, they're just reliving their parents' life with different figures and different, like, let's say, props in place. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I love these kind of social sciences, these sort of psychological research and stuff like that. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
there's a study out there that has some really crazy metrics. It was like, oh man, I'm just going to butcher it now, but it was something like there's quite a high percentage increase of a person being obese if they live within like 1 mile of a friend who's obese. Stuff like that. So like it is really strange how we mirror behaviors within a culture, the benchmarks that are set by our influencers and stuff like, and on a total subconscious level, like you're talking about now, like you would, these people would never realize that they're mirroring the lifestyle that their parents had. It feels different at the time, or there's such a big gap. But yeah, that's really interesting, man.
Well, I always find it crazy when they're like, oh, I live within 10 minutes of like my parents' house, unless you live in like the main places. Like, if your parents grew up in New York and you now live in New York, like there's little reason to leave if that's where you want to be, But when people kind of grow up, like just, I've moved down the road, you're like, have you moved?
Yeah, I think it's just testament to how tribal we are,
Yeah.
I mean, we really, and I get it, everybody wants to be part of something. And for me, like, this is the trick. This is why I think it's so important for kids to get into sports when they're young, because everybody wants to be part of something like that. Yeah, I mean, the Marines as well. It's same thing. Everyone who's ever been in the Marines or the military in general, typically will say, regardless of whether they enjoyed the career or not, that the thing that they missed was the lads, was the camaraderie. And it's amazing how we'll always gravitate towards those, those communities within communities that marry up with our own, with our own thinking, with our own behaviors and so forth.
I think everyone's kind of seen the boot camps and stuff that military people do. What do they do by way of like mentality? What is it that you were exposed to while you were there that you think was, is it what kind of testing did they put you to?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I always hear, people always love to have an opinion about stuff, don't they, even if they don't really understand it. And I hear a lot of like throwaway comments about the Marines specifically, but the military in general. And one I always really laugh at is when people say, yeah, in training, they break you down so they can build you back up. This one always really makes me laugh. Yeah, because that's not really the way I saw it. It was like the whole period of training is a mindset test. it's how much shit can you tolerate and still want to be here at the end? Like, that's it. And everyone says, oh, you must have been so physically fit to get into the Marines. It's like, I think I was about as fit when I started as I was when I finished, to be honest. Like, I just had the mental capacity to pass the test by the time I got to the end, because I was so used to being uncomfortable at that time. You just put up with anything. But yeah, that was the most surprising thing for me, really, was seeing the fittest guys in the troop. Yeah, so I started off. So just for a bit of background for anyone who doesn't know, the Marines is a bit different from the other military services in that everybody trains to do the same job initially. So everybody goes to Commando training center to train as a rifleman, Commando trained rifleman. Then you go to a fighting unit, and then you specialize in another job afterwards. So unlike the army, where you would do sort of basic training, but with a mind to go into a certain trade and then go straight into a job, everybody's trained to do the same job. I started off in a group of 60 guys, and there was 24 of us left by the end, which is actually a surprisingly large number. So, that just gives people listening an idea of how many people do not make it. Most people who apply never make it into training, and most people who start training do not make it to the end. And the most surprising thing for me was seeing the fittest guys pretty much all weeded out by like week 4 or 5, and then realizing like, wow, okay, this is just going to be a war of mental attrition. Like, who can just put up with it, and this is the only way I managed to pass. Like, I'll happily admit I wasn't one of the strongest members in my troop, but I just made the deal with myself that I was not going to leave under my own steam. Like, something was going to have to go badly wrong.
That's fascinating to me. I love that sort of stuff, because I've always said it's just who stays in those trenches longest. Like, it's a really weird thing in life that when things are going horribly wrong, the only thing you've got left is sticking with it. It's really weird. So, like, you can work, you can try this. Sometimes you've got no option but just to stay in that trench. And it's a very strange thing, because out of nowhere, it's kind of like when you see in the films where it's pouring with rain and then suddenly it all fades away and the sun comes up. It's like one of those moments where just out of nowhere it just goes click, and it's like, okay, finished, you win. It happens with entrepreneurialism a lot. And I always say to people that 1,000 people might start in the field that you're in. There might be loads that are better than you, but are they willing to do 20 years? With zero, let's say 12 years is the average before anybody gets success. Like, how many people do you know are willing to do 12 years without any profit? I probably know like 10. Yeah. I could probably count 10 people that I actually know who aren't ready, who could probably have that mindset to go 12 years without making any money, commit all their time, all their weekends, see their 20s out, and just keep going. And there's just something about being that one fucker in the group that just says, nah, I'm going to stay here. It's the one stubborn person that just sticks it out to the end. It's the same in trading and everything. When everyone's going, okay, we're going to go that way, we're going to sell, the one person that goes, I think I'm going to buy, and the person who everyone's selling, he just holds on to it a bit longer and makes that little bit extra. It's like, there's something about stubbornness and, selfishness that kind of gets people somewhere. Yeah, absolutely, mate. And that for me, that's one of the most interesting things about reading into, entrepreneurs that have made it, is realizing the truth about the inverted commas overnight success that actually took like 10 years, getting turned down by 98 investors before 99 would give you the time of day and all of this stuff, and oh man, that's definitely the way. And you got to kind of, I guess one method is to sort of fear of loss yourself almost, that, the next week that you stay in the game might be the week that you make it, and you always got to draw that comparison between, like worst case scenario versus best case scenario. Now is not worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is that I quit today, and then next week, I could have made it, and I'll be out of here doing something else, wondering if that was the week, or whatever.
the circumstance
Yeah,
may
that's
be.
kind of the ideal scenario, isn't it? Where everyone kind of hopes that next week it will pay off. Like I love this picture, but I always see it as the one where there's one guy who's like a millimeter from the diamond and he's given up and walking back, and then the guy at the bottom is still miles away, but he's not given up. He's still chopping towards it.
Yeah.
And that's great, but usually it's like I think it was Groupon. You know, it's a company like that who they tried Groupon. I think it was like 5 or 10 years earlier, but it was too early. Like the technology wasn't ready. People weren't willing to sign up. I don't think vouchers had really popped off. And then, you know, 5 or 10 years later, it starts to work and they come into the game. So sometimes it's a matter of timing of being like, okay, maybe I put it to the side for a year or two. Maybe I go back to the drawing board. But you know, just having that mentality of like, if it takes until I'm 50 or 60, then fuck it. If this is what I want to do, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep pushing forward. You're training a lot of CEOs, right? So you said high performing people.
Yeah, I mean that's
Do you notice that
before. With them? Yeah, there's some pretty distinct differences I've noticed between, you know, people who are very high performers with work in the way they train compared to the rest of us, I guess. And for me, it's the energy, you know, and there it goes back to what we were saying, like action breeds energy. Like these guys will work all day. Like I spent a season out in the French Alps training an investment broker. And so like this guy would be up first thing, he'd be on the, he's got his like command center set up, you know, like 5 different screens, the phone's going all day. All I can hear are these little like whistles and beeps, you know, as trades get made. And he's just like, you know, viewing it like the Matrix by this point, just like absolutely flying along, making all these deals and stuff. And then he'll literally be like, right, jump up, okay, Jim, let's go, you know, and it's that kind of energy, like, you know, that's the difference between, and again, you know, I really think it comes down to practice. You know, people don't realize that willpower is not an inherent trait. It's something that gets reinforced through discipline. And a big part of motivation is just momentum, is getting going. When you're up on the wave, you know, you can just surf that right the way back into the beach, you know, but you got to get up and on it. And you got to try and stay on it. And as soon as you come off, you got to get back on the next one. You know, you can't give yourself a chance to start drowning. Otherwise, you're going to end up underwater. So that's been the main difference for me, is the amount of energy that these guys put in. And I think another big part of it is having the predetermined decision made. You know, these guys don't give themselves a chance to negotiate with the option of not doing it. You know, the standard is just higher, you know, and you know, this comes back to one of the questions earlier as well. A massive benefit of being a part of an organization like the Marines. Everything you do is set at a higher standard. You know, most of the training is bullshit. It's making you make your bed every day. It's making you shave every day. It's making you clean your accommodation every day. You know, you're getting picked up for stuff, and you're just like, yeah, and that's it. You know, that's the stuff that kind of breaks people, because you're like, fuck, man, I came here to be a soldier. You know, I wanted to be,
I want to shoot people.
I wanted to be running through Vietnam. By this point, you know, but there's a point to it. You know, there's a point to being out on the drill square, marching around like an idiot, doing ridiculous, you know, stuff that's only ever going to be useful when one of the royal family passes away. And you know, it just breeds discipline. You know, it just breeds discipline, and discipline bolsters willpower. And then eventually, you know, when something becomes a habit, it goes from being the stuff that you need to motivate yourself for to just the shit that you do. Yeah. You know, and that's when it becomes your lifestyle. That's when it becomes seamless. And you know, when it's a habit, it's a predetermined decision. You know, when you're a guy who's already made the decision that you're gonna be training today after 8 hours of making trades, like you're just gonna do it. You're not gonna get to that point and go, oh, I'm not gonna do it anymore. Like that decision's been made because that's the standard, and that's your routine. And I think a reason why a lot of people fail in like the fitness journeys, the self-development journeys, is they just don't quite hang out long enough to turn those habits into a robust system of predetermined decisions. You know, you're still in that phase of having to motivate yourself to do everything. It's a bit difficult. Your motivation starts high. It tends to ebb after the first, 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month. And then right at that point where you're probably in all reality on the tipping point of becoming much more efficient at it and not having to think about it all and not having to make those decisions at the time that you're trying not to negotiate with weakness, then they give up. And so can't remember the original question.
It doesn't matter. This is the First Man podcast. It's not important. Yeah, it's the best way to do it, man. The best way to do it is organic. If you kind of do it like the BBC, I used to watch Jonathan Ross and get so annoyed. He used to ask a question, and while the person was umming and ahhing, he'd interrupt and ask another one, and I was like, what was the point? What was the point in that first question?
Yeah.
'Cause he had an agenda to drive it down a certain route and keep things entertaining. And it's like, do you know what? I think entertainment is more getting something from it. I personally think that's the new form of entertainment is extracting something you can then take into your own life, because that, you'll remember that a lot longer. It's not like, oh, he's got a cool guest on. It's like, shit, I learned something from that. I can put it into my own life. I'm going to come back because, that tweaks, that triggers something in your brain where it's like a thank you. So I think that's much more important. So it's just like, if you just go off tangent to another question, but you provide some key material for someone else that I wasn't thinking of, that's even better than what we planned. So I think that's great.
Oh, perfect.
What
I'm in the right spot.
What kind of challenges you've been up to lately? I saw your WhatsApp picture. I don't know if you noticed something on your WhatsApp picture as well. There's some ladies in the back. It looks like they're cheering for you. Did you know them? Or you're a handsome guy?
Actually I did. Yeah, it's funny because I didn't actually realize that you could see them in that picture when I put it up. But that's actually, that's part of my fan club. They follow me everywhere. That's my girlfriend. And so that was an Ironman that I ran last year in August. And so I was coaching one of my friends at the time, and he'd switched fire at the last minute from wanting to get kind of jacked and ripped to getting back into triathlon because of changing circumstances. And he's done triathlon before. So he's like, I was wondering, what do you think would be the chances of pulling off an Ironman within a year? And, anyway, one thing led to another, and I was like, you know what? We're going to do one. We're both doing Ironman in August. So we signed up to this thing, never even ridden a road bike, didn't have a bike. Was like, okay, first things first, need to find myself a bike. Anyway, I ended up smashing this Ironman in August, which was pretty cool. And the girls are my missus and his missus in the background.
Which one's hardest?
And the sister.
Triathlon?
I really think it just depends what comes down to your strengths. So for me, as soon as I finished the swim, I was happy because I was a terrible swimmer before I started training for the Ironman. I ended up getting a coach about 5 weeks before because I was still so inefficient in the pool that I was genuinely worried if I was actually going to finish the swim. Okay. So I just had massive anxiety about the water, and obviously having never even done like a short triathlon, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know how it was going to go with the transitions. I'd not managed to swim that far during a training session. I'd gone into a pool and done roughly about 3K, I think, in the pool. I was just praying that I was going to actually make it to the other end, but that ideally I would get out in under 90 minutes as well. And chances were looking slim. So, no pun intended. Cycling was like the next one down for me because I'd done a lot of running before. Like I'd been running running cross country for my unit when I've been in the Corps. I'd run marathons with like weight on my back and stuff like that. So like I knew I was pretty well equipped for the run. So it's weird because I was actually looking forward to the run. It was kind of a sadistic mentality, really, because you've already done a 3.8k swim, 108-kilometer cycle, and then I was kind of getting into this marathon with a smile on my face, like, right, now I know I'm all over it. I can smash this bit. So yeah, for me, the swim was the hardest. And the run was actually like surprisingly pleasant, just because I knew I'd made it by that point. I was definitely going to finish it.
Yeah, I saw some science before about when you're on your last rep, and it's hurting so much. If you smile, you can push out another 2 or 3. And I think there's something to do with actually like, enjoying it and tricking your brain chemistry into saying, okay, we can do this, and feeling familiar with something. I think there's definitely something to that.
Absolutely, yeah. There are studies into this. Sort of neuropsychology of exercise, where they show that people who smile when they're training do tend to achieve better performance. Ross Edgley's always harping on about this as well, like the guy who swam around Great Britain, and I haven't read his book yet, but I think he touches on this in his new book. But yeah, that also kind of ties in with the ethos of the Marines as well. One of the core sort of characteristics that they encourage you to pay a lot of focus on when you're in training is cheerfulness in the face of adversity. And I didn't think I really understood the implications of it from a sort of neuropsychological point of view when I was going through the motions of it. But I think that's really the whole point. When you're more cheerful, obviously it brings up people around you, but actually for yourself, it does you a lot of favors. When you start playing the victim, you start feeling sorry for yourself. That's just created a whole new level of hurt that you don't need to tolerate. If you could just crack a smile and crack on. Yeah. And it definitely, there's definitely something in it. I remember there was one guy, so I ran it in Copenhagen, and, you've got the like your national flag on your bib, so everyone can see where you're from. And there was one English guy that was in the crowd at this one point of the marathon, which was 4 loops. And every time I ran past him, he cheered me on and called my name. And every time I looked up, he was stood there. I remember he was just stood there with a pint in his hand and this massive, stupid grin, like knowing that it was going to make me laugh. And that was like, that was the point of the lap. Yeah, that really spurred me on, really kept me going. Like, I wish I knew who that guy was. I would have loved to have gone to at the end and be like, mate, you've got no idea how much that actually picked me up. But yeah, so for sure there's something in it, definitely.
What I like about when we had our first call, what I gathered from you is that the first call we had, you were out in the woods, I could hear the birds chirping. You were like, I like to just get out and see different things. And I saw a couple of pictures on your LinkedIn where it looked as though you were on Mars, you're in the middle of nowhere. And I think it's so important to kind of get out of that hustle and bustle of the city now and again, and just kind of challenge yourself on, I guess you would call like old school terrains, where it's just the land is just natural. It's natural landscape. It's just as it always was. It's not like a bench press, but where you're just led in a perfect position. It's perfectly balanced. Like when I used to do labouring, we used to have to pick up blocks, just giant rocks and beams and stuff that was so unbalanced. There was more weight on the right than the left, and I just think it's so important to do those kind of things. And that's what I loved about your training, of like seeing you in the great outdoors, just trying different shit. I thought that was amazing. What kind of places have you been to?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think what you're saying is absolutely bang on. It's hugely important. I mean, I try to stay in my lane a little bit sometimes when I'm making videos and content and stuff, but I'm almost on the brink of pseudoscience and and kind of taking the sort of hippie-esque route with some of the stuff, because I really passionately believe that one of the big influencing factors towards a decline in public health is a deep disconnect with nature, and that is being steadily proven by modern Western science. Anyway, we know that, as an example, you get these hippies that love to go out and like connect with the earth and go barefoot and stuff like that. But we know that there is an electrical charge on the surface of the earth, and that when you're in contact with that has a an influence on the electrical charges on the surface of our skin, and that influences transitions from the parasympathetic nervous system, from the sympathetic nervous system back to the parasympathetic nervous system. So going from a state of alertness back to rest, which is one of the most important things for people to be trying to do nowadays, because we're obviously always exposed to loads of stimulus around us. Our sensory reception's on max level all of the time, especially if you live in a city. It's no secret that cities are kind of bad for health, really, in comparison to rural locations. And one of the reasons for that is there's just so much stuff going on. Everything that causes you to react to it is a stressor. And a lot of that stress we can manage, but a lot of it is we can't. And in any case, it keeps us in that state of alertness, and being in that state chronically is very bad. So getting out into nature, getting out into the wild is the best way, in my opinion, to immediately help regulate that, to bring us back down to that sort of state of rest and relaxation. Take some quiet time in the forest. There's studies that show that even after half an hour of being in a forest, heart rate starts to go down. Again, triggering these responses that cause us to come back to that state of rest. Mate, I'm always trying to get out there. Sometimes you have to be a bit creative when you live in the city. Before, pre-COVID breakout, I was getting on a train at least once or twice a week to just head out to a lake somewhere. And this comes back to spending time outside of your comfort zone. There's been a lot of studies as well to do with environmental enrichment. I don't know if you're familiar with this term.
No.
They've done a lot. Right. Okay. So this is particularly important when it comes to learning. They find that people learn better if there's a presence of a novel factor. Okay. So for example, that you're more likely to remember something that's funny. If it's something that you haven't seen before, if it's different, obviously these are sort of, you could start talking about strategies that are used in marketing where people put product placement in places you wouldn't expect it and stuff like that. If it's different, we tend to remember it. And what they found, particularly in studies with rodents, is that when they put them in environments where they've got lots of stimulation, lots of things to play with, the ability to do fitness, mouse wheels and all this kind of stuff, that they tend to process information better, and they respond to the tasks and challenges that they give them then better than the rodents that are put into non-stimulating environments that don't have anything for them to interact with. And they found the same thing for humans. And what tends to happen is if we're in environments that give us this enrichment, this environmental enrichment, we start to produce things like more brain-derived neurotropic factor, being a big one. So lots of people watching might have heard of this, might be aware of some of the research that takes place with that, but it basically enhances your ability to learn. So it goes hand in hand with learning. But again, it's also getting out and getting outside of your comfort zone. Going somewhere that you're not familiar with forces you to adapt to that environment. And again, like mindset wise, I think that's really important. So I'll quite often, without too much more waffle, I'll quite often just pick a spot on the map, be like, right, that place looks green. It's got a lake. That looks like there's probably some paths in the woods. I'm going there. I'll get on a train. I'll go there with just a rucksack. I'll set myself a time, right? I want to be here by this time, and then I'll just run. I'll spend the day there. I'll chill out. I'll explore some places, go to a new cafe or whatever, and then come home. And for me, that's a big part of health.
I love that, man. Like, I grew up in the countryside. People have no idea what it's like to just walk through the woods, maybe on your own early morning. Just like there's kind of like an energetic buzz. It's weird. It's kind of, it comes up from the soil, the trees. There's a smell as well. There's like a warmth feeling. There's a smell. It kind of feels protected. You've got this, what would you call it? Kind of just the biology around you, like the animals, the plants. You can kind of feel them being alive, like the sense of survival, growth. What they've all got their own little habitats. Like, there's an entire ecosystem, and you're in it.
Absolutely,
you're in the center of it. I just think that's unbelievable.
Yeah, nature has a presence for sure, you know, and you know, the great thing about science is, everybody's always sort of looking towards science to give us all the answers, and that's great. Like, I think everyone that has like a coaching service should be evidence-based. You know, you should be able to justify the practices that you're using, and my mission is always to try and take some of these more kind of left field sort of hippie-ish type stuff and really unwrap the science that underpins it, so that I can turn it into something that's practical for everyday people, like we were talking about on our phone call before. You know, I think one of the right, okay, yes. So I think one of the tragedies for a lot of people when it comes to stuff like, you know, yogic practices and these kind of ancient sort of wisdoms that get passed into our culture is that they're often dressed up in this sort of flowery language and you know, unfamiliar kind of context that tends to put people off, and they're not aware of the science and they don't really get it, and it's just like, I'm not really spiritual, it's not for me, you know. But the sad part of that is that there's lots of benefits of this stuff, and the science is out there, you know, but we just need to take what we know actually works and repackage it for people that haven't spent half their lives, you know, meditating in the Tibetan mountains, you know. Actually, that's what I was going to say, was that one of the great things about science is it actually uncovers more about what we don't know than what we do know, you know. And that's one of the massive benefits of doing new research, is that it picks holes in all the shit that we think we know already, and then it paves the way for more research, and it's this never-ending kind of cycle. And so, you know, even though we're always looking to science, even within the scientific community, you know, we're aware that there's loads of stuff we do not understand, and in any case, you know, we do know that all living things are giving off frequencies, that everything's, you know, got energy there in some capacity or another, and you can feel it. You can definitely feel it, man, when you're out there, like exactly as you said it. You know, you walk through a forest, especially in the early hours, and that's a really interesting one to do with light. You know, many people will be aware that light plays a role in managing our circadian rhythms. And our circadian rhythms are really influential on how much energy we have, our mood, our brain's ability to re-regulate the neurotransmitters that, you know, and the chemicals that are going on in there. And one of the really interesting things I was reading about light, and I really want to verify as well, but I only read it a week or so ago, is that the frequency of the light that happens about an hour after sunrise, it has a slightly different effect on, or it basically has a much greater influence on the production of serotonin. Okay, and the serotonin cycle, kicking the serotonin cycle off first thing in the morning, has a hugely beneficial impact on your ability to sleep later that night, because it goes into this cycle where it then gets transduced later on in the day into melatonin, which is the thing that makes you want to go to sleep. So actually, this is one of the, it's super interesting.
It's the same light, right? It's not going to have any more potency. I could be way off on that. I'm not an expert.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Apparently, you know, the eye is tuned to the different frequencies of a light, and the light early on in the day is a certain frequency that triggers this much greater release of serotonin first thing. Like I say, I'd like to do a bit more research on that one and corroborate it. The audience can feel free to do that as well. But yeah, this is one of the reasons why we use these filters on our phones and things, you know, because what they're actually managing is the frequency of the light. You know, the ones that actually work, they're not just filtering, you know, out the amount of light. They're actually managing the frequency of the light. So that's why they help you to feel tired, like in the evening, and don't keep you awake and stuff like that.
That's done in the army as well, isn't it? Right? They had I saw an experiment where they had goggles with blue light around the eyes so that they could stay awake for longer and stay alert for longer. Is that something
really?
you've experienced with? No.
No, I wish.
Like or something. Yeah, I could do them every day.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Oh no, there's nothing worse than nodding on your sentry position because you've been awake for 2 days straight or whatever. No, I definitely could have done with a pair of those multiple times during my career there.
I think we're approaching around about an hour now, so I was thinking just so that you can get your kind of pitch in there as well. Otherwise, it's not fair if we go on so long, and as YouTube figures show, that people drop off as you go. So, if people wanted to find you, wanted to find your stuff, wanted to follow you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best way to follow me would be to find me on Facebook. So that's Theseus Body and Mind. I've got a free online community. Anyone can join that and check out the content that's going up there. There's plenty of free content going up to sort of talk about the sort of stuff that I provide, talk more about all the stuff that I've covered in this show. The way to work with me is that I provide an ongoing coaching service. I've got fairly new service now, which is for people that want to go well beyond the average, and that's my limitless service. So that's for people that really want to not just get in shape, but take their performance to the next level, look at optimizing every aspect of their lifestyle, including sleep, mood, diet, mindset management tools for a successful, winning mindset. So that's the service that I provide, and plenty of free content on Facebook if they want to check me out there, and all other platforms, same thing, Theseus Body and Mind. So that's where you find me.
Hopefully you get a lot of people coming over. One thing I was going to ask you for the streaming service, would you be willing to do a couple of like fitness challenges, kind of like Top Gear based fitness challenges, where we follow you around, couple of drones, we set you on this like sort of task, we come up with certain, I don't know, maybe there's some famous ones that are out there, maybe we can make some up and just say, okay, you've got to get from here to here with this amount of supplies, or just, we can just make some shit up and just say, look, let's survive, let's go back to the old school, let's see how fit you are, and just inspire people that way. What do you think? Make fitness interesting.
You couldn't have asked somebody more game for that. I'm actually desperate for a challenge right now. I've been texting one other person I know who's sadistic as me about this sort of thing to see if he's up for something brutal. So just feel free to throw a challenge my way.
All right.
Sounds awesome, man. I'm there.
All right, let's like I say, it's nearly an hour or so. I think it might be a bit more, so we'll call it a day. But Cameron, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it, buddy. I think you provided a bag of information that I can get out to the audience, especially through the snippets and stuff. But not only that, but I think you've added a whole new dimension. Like the way that you're doing things is mixed in with the mentality. I think it's refreshing to see, like I said, it's the old school kind of military background, but with more of a subtle, modern, like you said, hippified mindset, but brought together into this kind of concoction, which I think in the modern era is going to be a winning recipe for so many guys out there. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I'm more than happy to talk about this anytime. So look forward to the next one.
Thank you, buddy. There has to be a next one. Appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thanks so much, man.
See you soon.
Take it easy.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, catch you soon.